Thank y'all for joining once again. This is the G Podcast, where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. This is the G Podcast, and today we got a special guest. Mike Brock is in the building. This is Bull City Zone. We getting right to it. Yes, indeed. One more time, y'all. This is the G Podcast, where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. This is the G Podcast. Mike, thank you so much for joining.
Thank you for having me, G. It's a pleasure and it's an honor, man. Thank you for having me.
Mike is somebody who I met. Actually, that's just how we're going to get started. This is something that I've said before on the podcast. Durham is a Hoopers city. A lot of Hoopers come out of Durham. And I first met Mike in what I would consider what is like a legendary era of growing up in Durham, when the church leagues was definitely something that everybody was hooping in. Everybody hooped in the church league. Yep. I met Mike playing for Mount Vernon Baptist Church. Shout out.
Yes, indeed.
My first question is just what memories do you have playing on that church league team for Mount Vernon and just church league in Durham in general?
Well, I remember the practices. I remember we had one of our coaches was actually a JV player at UNC. So I was amazed by that. And I remember just having just the freedom to actually play. It was one thing from playing in your neighborhood. In my backyard, my neighbor had a dirt court. We used to play tournaments on that all the time. But that was my first opportunity to actually play organized ball. I just remember having a lot of fun with it, man. Not only playing with guys who you went to church with, but actually competing against other churches and taking it seriously, wanting to win. And I think that's a lot of where my competitiveness started.
Word up. Definitely competitive. A lot of folks came through that era of playing in the different churches. Mm-hmm. What school were you at, though, at that time period? Like, before you got to Hillside, like, can we just shout out some of the schools that you went to before high school?
Yeah, man, for sure. I started out at, I'm going to go preschool. I started out at NCCU.
Word.
At the I forget the name, Child Development Center. Then went to Pearsontown, Rogers Herd when it was still a 6th grade center. Then Githens. And from Githens, I went to Jordan for 3 years, and then I ended up at Hillside.
That's something I want to talk about because I feel like growing up in Durham, Hillside and Jordan definitely are two of the more, especially on that south side of Durham. They're basically the two schools, right? And a lot of games are played with families in terms of whose address you use, where you're going to end up going to school. Like, why did you end up leaving Jordan to go to Hillside?
So I left Jordan for 2 reasons. One, my younger sister was going to Hillside her freshman year, which was my senior year, to do the IB program. She went to Shepherd. She was able to do the IB program in middle school. And then 2, I didn't play basketball my junior year. So for whatever reason, the coach, I ain't even going to mention his name, he had an issue with the JV coach when I played my sophomore year. And because I played 2 sports, for whatever reason, he was like, outside of Kenny, he wasn't taking anybody else. Kenny was a baller, man.
Kenny was the star, boy.
Yeah, Kenny could move.
Yeah.
I'm 6 foot, and my I wasn't the best hooper. But I had a good rapport with the coach at Hillside, and he told me I could come play there. So it was twofold. And then I wound up not even really playing my senior year because I broke my leg in football practice in the fall. So I kind of missed most of basketball season, just caught the tail end. So I couldn't even play against Jordan, which is really I really wanted to play Jordan.
So if I'm hearing this right, at the time, there was an issue playing both football and basketball, and that played a part, you feel like, in your opportunities to really like do what you needed to do, say, from a basketball standpoint.
Right, because at that time, football season, we were practicing during the summer. So the basketball team was going to different team camps. They were still practicing in the summer, and I was going to end up playing guard. And Jordan had a stack of guards who were good. Like, I'm not taking away anything from anybody. Jordan had a really good team, a lot of talented folks. So I think my opportunity was limited by that, and I think there was also a relationship issue, and maybe the coach just didn't like my game. I don't know, but I felt like I felt like I wasn't gonna let that be the end all be all.
Like, let's just talk about that for a moment, because it's not uncommon where I even heard, like, I was listening to some interview with Matt Barnes, and he was talking about Mo Cheeks and how Mo Cheeks was basically like dogging him the whole time, like going extra and above to like put him down, discourage him. And it really got to him. Like, did you have any type of feeling that like the coach had something personal against you, or like did it like make you like really kind of like do something or react in a way at that time period?
He told me during football season, or maybe before the beginning of football season my junior year, that I should focus on football. And that was kind of like, it was leading. So he was kind of telling me, you ain't gonna play basketball this year. Which was crazy to me because I led JV in scoring, rebounds. Like, I was doing my thing. So I'm thinking, of course, I'm going to move up. But it just didn't work out like that. And it was probably for the better. But there was no animosity or anything like that between us. I think he just had his guys, honestly. I think he had his guys, and I think I just didn't fit in what he was looking to build. And years later, that's fine. But of course, during that period, it hurts. Rejection is one of the worst things anybody can go through. But it pushed me to not let that stop me. So
and like going to Hillside, I'm curious to know, right? So 3 years at Jordan, 1 year at Hillside. Do you wish you went to Hillside for all 4 years, or do you wish, if you could only choose one of the two, do you wish you went to Hillside all 4 years, or stayed at Jordan and graduated from Jordan?
I would probably choose Hillside. I think that, granted, Jordan prepared me for college. I will say that. And I had a lot of good teachers. I was challenged by the work. I didn't necessarily feel as challenged at Hillside, but being around so many Black people in honors classes, so that was the thing that I missed at Jordan. A lot of times in those honors classes at Jordan, I was the only Black student in there, or one of two.
Right.
So it's kind of like go HBCU before you go to an HBCU, if you will. And the teachers were very supportive. Even if you weren't doing your best, they will work with you. You know what I'm saying? That's one of the things that you just don't get at schools that aren't majority Black. So I would say Hillside, but honestly, I wouldn't change anything. I think that I gained a good understanding of a lot of different perspectives by going to both that I might not have if I didn't. So for me, it's always good to have reference from different angles.
It's definitely like how you described it. I always describe Hillside as a local high school HBCU. It has a defined culture. You know what to expect. And even like the kids before they get there, like they know why they want to go to Hillside.
I will say when I went to Hillside, I was that first week when we walked through metal detectors, I was like, what is going on? Where am I?
Eastside High. You end up going to Tuskegee, right? Like, let me take a step back, because I actually visited that school on a college tour when I was working in the Upward Bound program, right? So I was on a bus with some high school kids from North Carolina, passing through, and then ended up stopping and did the tour at Tuskegee on our way to somewhere else. When I tell you that when I got off the highway, or when we got off the highway and then started going to the school, it literally felt like I was going back in time.
Oh, like, yeah. And then you see the houses, those old plantation style houses coming up towards the school. Yeah,
I'm glad you said that, because in my head I was like, yo, this still looked like slavery out here. And this was like still like 20, this is like, oh, this is right. This is before COVID, but this is not that long ago, right?
Yeah.
And then I did the tour and everything, and I was mad impressed. Like, of course, you know about Tuskegee, but really like hearing the history, the connections to George Washington Carver, Booker T. Washington. Like, I was really digging the vibes. I was like, man, I really didn't know about Tuskegee or really think about it coming out of high school. I'm curious, like, how did you even think about, or why did you even think about applying to this school, one? And if you didn't go there, where would you have probably ended up?
So I only applied to two schools. I applied to Tuskegee and I applied to Morehouse. My father went to Morehouse. My grandfather, Morehouse legacy, if you will. Tuskegee gave me a full ride. Now I have an aunt who went to Tuskegee, and she was pressing me about it. My junior year in high school, and at the time I didn't know much about it. I really didn't, and I learned more as I applied. And really, the obviously I went there because of a full scholarship and because my aunt championed me to apply and look into it. But I'm really thankful that I had the opportunity to go there. Like you were saying, the history and the culture is rich at Tuskegee. When I was there, I came to find out that Marcus Garvey modeled a lot of things that he did after Booker T. Washington.
Right.
And just being able to have that access to the different literature and different things that Booker T actually wrote himself within the library, and just seeing the history of even the Tuskegee Airmen. They have a museum not too far from campus, and it just has a very strong history and a very committed alumni base as well. So I went there. They had a great engineering program. I knew I wanted to do engineering, and I knew I wanted to get out of North Carolina, which is why I applied to Tuskegee and Morehouse. But thankful nonetheless that I ended up at Tuskegee.
So it was ultimately because of the money that you chose Tuskegee. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. My parents told me when I was, or really all myself and my sisters, from when we were young, if you don't get a scholarship, I don't know what you're gonna do. So, it really was, and I kind of limited myself by only applying to two schools. But for me, it was those two or bust. Like, I'll figure something else out, or maybe end up going to A&T or something. But A&T is a great school. I wanted to leave North Carolina.
No, I feel that. But that is still, though, like, going from Durham to that area. Like, what did you do for fun if you weren't, say, at school in that environment?
I learned how to create my own fun, and that's what Tuskegee does. Like, we had parties in an old movie theater of some really sketchy what are called clubs, but it was really going down a dirt road to this little shack, little shake joint. Not shake joint, but juke joint. I'm sorry. We had fun on campus too. There were a couple liquor stores there that didn't ID folks, and and
everybody in the sticks, boy. Yeah.
Brought it back to campus. House parties on campus. So it was a lot of fun. And that's what kind of led me to realize that when somebody says they're not enjoying something, it really makes me question, well, what are you involved in? What are you just sitting in your room playing the game, or it forces you to step out of your comfort zone, do some, just get to know people. And I think, I don't want to keep going back to Morehouse, but I think being in a bigger city, for me at least, would have been a way bigger distraction than being in Tuskegee, because we were limited in what we could do. But we also had Auburn and Montgomery right down the street. So we went to Montgomery every now and then, or went to Auburn, and went to some of those college parties at Alabama State and Auburn. So still able to connect with schools around.
Outside of Tuskegee, I'm just curious, because I've never lived in Alabama, maybe spent a night or two here or there, but I always get chills, like, when I start driving that route. And then, okay, I already get nervous when I get to South Carolina. I'm already like, okay, this is a different world now, like, cruise control. All right, I get to Georgia. Just for some reason, you feel just a little bit better once you get to Georgia. But then once I get to Alabama, dog, I get nervous. Like, did you have any experiences in Alabama, just living there as a student, that you feel like was unique to that area? Or was it like way better than what you might expect?
There are definitely a lot more police, just lurking around. And I got pulled over for a lot of things that were just frivolous, like, oh, you didn't turn your signal before you actually made the turn.
Mm.
Like just little frivolous stuff to where in my mind I'm thinking, okay, is this because I'm black? But I can't prove it. So just subtle things. But for the most part, it didn't ruin my fun. And I never really dealt with any type of direct racism. I would say that when I lived in Auburn for a while, being around Auburn students, I got asked a few times, like, what sport do you play? Just like, I can't just be a student.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
I can't be a student.
Yeah.
So
They
it
trying to
was some
figure it
of
out
that.
like
Why are you here? But I'm
Yeah.
sure that happens a lot more places than just Alabama. But I don't know. I enjoyed my time there. I had a good circle of friends. Was able to pledge a fraternity, Alpha Phi Alpha. It just kind of stuck to my core. And plus, I was an engineering major, so I couldn't really be out too much. You know
Like,
what I'm
why
saying?
is that? Like, talk to me about, because like you also said you knew you wanted to be a engineer. Like, how did you know that leaving high school that you wanted to be an engineer?
I knew that because I was very inquisitive. My dad used to work at Best Buy, and I used to just run up there like when I was in middle school and just like look around and stuff. And I always found myself in the car garage where they would hook up people's systems and all that sort of
Oh
thing.
yeah.
And that's a foreign thought now. Like
Yeah.
younger generation has no idea what that was.
Yo, had to have some kind of sound in the whip. Don't matter what the whip looked like, neither. You gotta have
Right.
something in there. Yeah.
So that kind of led me to when I had a car my junior year, doing it myself. And I enjoyed that. And then I did it for a couple of other friends as well. And then this may sound crazy, but I remember Googling, or maybe not Google, it might have been like Ask Jeeves or something, but like the top 10 salaries after school. And
Yeah.
like seven out of the, like without going to grad school, 7 out of the 10 were all some type of engineering. So I was like, I really don't like school. I'm gonna do something that's gonna guarantee me some money, or something that I also have an interest in.
That is dope because for a couple of reasons. One is like you actually said that's what you wanted to do, and then you fast forward, you were doing engineering stuff. So
Yeah.
like not very like it happens, but like I don't think it happens like that often where the thing you actually seek out to do once you say leave high school, you actually like end up doing that. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying? A lot of us typically, like even like myself, you fall into the career or the professional path you end up
Yeah.
staying in, and then going to Tuskegee. Like, I don't know. Say I did learn that Tuskegee did have like a STEM focus. Do you think that your engineering background may have been different had you went the Morehouse route, maybe chose a different major, or do you think it would have still ended up being the same? Like you definitely were engineering regardless.
Well, so there are a couple things to that question. First, I will say Tuskegee does a great job with putting on career fairs and getting some of the top Fortune 500, Fortune 100 companies coming to campus looking for the best black talent. Tuskegee does a great job of doing that. And I was just fortunate to be able to appeal to an aerospace company in Savannah, Georgia, Gulfstream, to be able to land in a co-op or internship. I think had I gone to Morehouse, that I still would have done engineering, but I would have had to do a dual degree program with another school, like maybe a Michigan or Georgia Tech, something
Mm.
like that. So there's no telling where I would have landed from that, and I'm not sure what those schools, their career fairs look like. But I do know that Tuskegee just does a great job of putting students in place to at least be seen and evaluated. So I was fortunate just to be a part of that.
That's dope. No, that is dope. And for like anybody listening, like I think that's one thing. If you got relatives in that range, if there's anything you can encourage them to do, even more so than going to class, is going to those fairs, yo.
Yep.
Really
Yep.
networking, getting to understand what these opportunities are, what you need to do to be in position to get those. And it's nice to be at a university where you could take advantage of stuff like that. But I know I was pretty lazy in undergrad. I didn't take advantage of any of that stuff. And
Yeah.
I know it was available, but like I said, I got to be honest, I didn't have like an idea of what I wanted to do. And I
Yeah.
think having an idea of like, even if you want to be a doctor, that's going to require certain steps. If you're going to be a lawyer, that's going to require certain steps. And I'm thinking similar with engineer, that requires certain steps to get to those positions. Like, can you get hired to be an engineer without majoring in engineering? Like, or is that really the only pathway there from your experience?
I have seen people get hired as well, they won't title them as an engineer, but they'll do engineering work. But like
Mm.
physics majors, some math majors, and then you always have people who maybe started as on the level of a technician who have just worked with the company for a while or done a certain type of work and then be hired as some sort of engineering drafter or something like that. So I think more than anything, you don't necessarily have to have an engineering degree, but it has to be STEM focused, or you just have to know somebody. And we all know the good old boy system still exists, or having somebody high up in a company to be able to vouch for you. That's still the world today.
No question. No question. And that word engineering, like we hear it all the time.
Mhm.
Engineering, but it's mad types of engineering. It's
Oh,
mad
yeah.
types of engineering. Just in your own words, if you will. If you could break down just what engineering even means, just the simple word, like to a regular person who's like, what do they mean by engineering? Like, what does that mean to be a quote unquote engineer? Or what does that word mean, say professionally?
To me, and this may not be textbook, but to me, it's really taking an idea and putting it into action. And that could be whether you're designing a program on a computer or you're designing some sort of or let's just say audio system for your car. Let's say you have an idea of how many speakers you want in your car, what type of amp you want. You got to figure out how to route the wires. You got to figure out the type of wire you need, what gauge. You got to figure out a lot of different things. To me, that's engineering. You have an idea and you go through the steps to actually make it come to fruition. Or that could be just making something better. To me, that's engineering. But that could be designing a highway or a bridge, civil engineering, or figuring out how much concrete you need to make something level. That's all engineering.
And what type of engineering did you end up studying?
So I studied electrical engineering. I studied electrical.
If you study electrical engineering, is that like how you explained you was doing car systems, right?
Hmm.
Is that in the curriculum by chance, or like
No,
when you say electrical engineering, are we talking like a power plant? Like, what does that mean, electrical engineering?
so it like a lot of the things that I studied were the basics. Excuse me. Obviously, just learning a lot of theory with when it comes to voltage, resistance, and current. And I'm not sure how deep you want to get into that, but it was really learning a lot of theory and doing a lot of labs to see how that actually could be applied. We took a bunch of different courses, a lot of math, but it more than anything, engineering is really teaching you how to think through a problem
Mhm.
and really give you the tools to devise a plan and know where to go step by step and learn how to troubleshoot when you run into issues. But to answer your question, it was a bunch. I took electronics, digital signals processing, a bunch of different courses that I couldn't tell you what they are today because I don't use it. But it's just a lot of problem solving. A lot of problem solving.
And because you ended up studying, say that it took you to, like you said, this co-op, and you said Gulfstream,
Yeah,
or
Gulfstream. So Gulfstream does like the G4, G5 jets. You've heard it fly like a G6.
yeah,
I
yeah.
actually I did a lot of electrical design work on the G6.
And what is an example of what electrical design work on a G6 looks like to the person who's just on the plane?
I guess what people may be able to relate to the most is you see all the lights when you get in the plane. Well, the lights had to get there somehow. The wiring has to go to some sort of power bus, which are powered by the engines or maybe powered by auxiliary power when it's sitting at the tarmac. So all of that has to be in a place in a proper place. There are a lot of different things. You got water systems on airplanes. You have ventilation ducts on airplanes. It's just all type of stuff. If you pull all the panels back and you just look at the skeleton or the bones of it, there are wires running all up and down an aircraft. Similar to a home. You flip on a light switch. Well, how does the light switch get on? Well, there are wires running from lights to the switch and from the switch to the power source.
So are those skill sets easily translated? Like if you're a quote unquote electrician who does house wiring, could you just easily transition and start doing what you're talking about in the context of those planes, or is it completely different worlds?
I don't think there's any reason anybody could not. I think that there are different standards. Like obviously the aircraft within this country are regulated by the FAA, whereas with homes and other businesses or whatever, they're regulated, I think, by the state, which is why most people who do any type of building have to have what you call a PE or a professional engineering license, whereas I don't have to. So it's really just.
And why don't you have to?
Honestly, I don't know the answer to that question, but it's not standard in the aviation industry for people to have PE licenses. I think it has more to do with liability, because a lot of people who build homes or build offices or whatever, they're not backed by this $1 billion company or don't have the infrastructure and lawyers and auditors to work with a compliance agency. So a lot of liability is placed on the actual engineer or the electrician, so that if something goes wrong, that they are liable, not the company.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Word. So that was your first like gig. Was that like an internship while you were still in school, or were you out of school and that was like your first gig out of school?
My first co-op rotation, I did 3 rotations. I had to my first rotation was second semester junior year. So I would go to Savannah, and then the summer I came back to Tuskegee, took summer courses, went back to Savannah in the fall, came back to Tuskegee, took spring courses, went back to Savannah in the summer, and then finished my senior year. So it was just like a every other semester thing. And I was fortunate that Tuskegee allowed me to do that because I was on an 8 semester scholarship. So it was like, we're going to pay for 8 semesters. So I was fortunate that they allowed me to just work that out. But it's basically an internship,
Yeah.
just on a different schedule.
And like that experience working in aviation, that opened up, I guess, new doors like to like a different to sort of world, if you will, of like, because with electrical engineering, like, did you have a goal to go to aviation route? Like, or was it more so just like by chance you ended up being
It
able
was
to
by
take advantage?
It was by chance, but I'm fortunate because I look at other industries. Aviation and aerospace pay the most for what I do. So if I was doing the same thing, let's say in the auto industry, I have a lot of classmates who ended up going to GM and Ford. One, all of that is in Michigan. I didn't want any parts of
Word.
Michigan. I love Detroit. I didn't want to go up there at that time. But I was just fortunate to get into the aviation industry because there are so many different projects you can get involved with. Everything from private jets to commercial planes to your military and defense helicopters and fighter jets to spaceships, rockets, satellites. It's just so many different things to where if there's a turn in the market, there's some segment of aviation that is still going to be going. Because there are always ups and downturns. I was fortunate to get into the aviation industry.
Like you just said, because the space talk now is getting very heavy.
Mhm.
The Starlinks of the world, like
Yep,
where you actually will see that mug certain places, like
yep,
travel in the sky. You think it's a UFO, you about to get
yep,
attacked. You hit the
yep.
Google search, it's Starlink. Like to your point, like you say, even like in the sky, like so that time in Savannah and then
Mhm.
getting introduced to this industry. Once you left Tuskegee, where did you ultimately end up next?
I went to Elmira, New York, and I went there. What I realized in Savannah, one, coming out of school, we were working like 60-hour weeks. And it was just like, it wasn't what you think after college life is going to be like. And it was kind of like a voluntold thing. It wasn't like you had the option to do it.
Right.
We were in a mission critical situation, which basically means we need to hit certain milestones so our company can make money. And I just was not with it. And like after like 2 years of doing it, I'm just like, this is not the end of my life. But I realized most of my team was contractors. Contractors get paid, compared to somebody fresh out of college, 2.5 times more than what I was getting paid. So light bulb went off in my head, was like, get a contracting gig because you're doing the same thing that everybody else is doing. So I found a gig up in New York with Sikorsky working on Black Hawk helicopter. Crazy thing is, yeah. So I was doing like system modifications where we were putting like radar jammers in Black Hawks for Colombia, and I forget some of the other countries we were working for. But the government has contracts with different countries who are our allies. So I was modifying Black Hawks for our allies. With different electrical equipment.
Hey man, this sound like some old, this sound like some old, what's my band name? This some old Snowfall shit, man. This is like like, okay, you was really in the weeds there, like jamming radar for Black Hawks. Like, dog.
Yeah.
And where, you said? And where in New York?
Elmira, New York. This is a crazy thing, though, G. A week after I get up there, and this speaks to when you're a contractor, they can let you go tomorrow. They don't got to give you a reason. A week after I got up there, they had a facility meeting, and they basically said, we're shutting this facility down before the end of the year. And I'm just thinking, I just quit my job.
Dang.
I just quit. Y'all tell me I moved my whole life up here. So I was there for a few months, and then ultimately I ended up in Houston for a year working on a project for International Space Station. I feel crazy saying something like throwing this out because I know it comes off like, what?
People gotta hear it, yo. You from Durham too, like, yo, this is wild, like, because, yo, that's what I'm saying, like, this just insight into the career path, where it started, how you get from A to Z, is a big part of why I try to do these podcasts, because a lot of us just don't know. You see what I'm saying? It's like, people will have ideas, people will even have dreams, but don't have a path forward or a framework to follow, or they just don't know where to start. And like I asked you earlier about like how you even necessarily consider engineering, there might be a lot of inquisitive individuals, curious individuals, problem solvers out there who have that sort of mindset that is naturally suitable for this sort of career path, but they don't even put in the time and energy to sharpen that part of their skill set. So I think just people sharing their honest story and journey, like regardless of the heights, the lows, and how you get from A to B to C, is key, because we can all learn from that type of thing, in my opinion, man. So I appreciate you being open up to share, but it does sound a little crazy. Working on Black Hawks and then going from Black Hawks to, we say, International Space Station in Houston.
When I was in Houston, the project that I was working on was the International Docking Adapter, which is basically an adapter to allow or commercial rockets to attach to the space station. Now you have SpaceX. I think they have a Dragon that sends stuff up to the space station. But before, it was only, I think, one NASA vehicle that could attach. So we designed an adapter that basically all of the commercial, almost like it's like a universal adapter, that any company that wants to bid to be able to send stuff to the space station or astronauts, they could design their interface to interlock with that. So I worked on that project for a year, went to Philly and did some system.
And so are you going from project to project because you had that realization that you wanted to go more of this like mercenary route, if you will, like contract for hire, like Just
Yeah, that's what it
boom,
really
boom, boom,
was.
versus looking for something that was more stable, for maybe lack of better words, or consistent?
Well, I don't know, man. I'm an explorer at heart. I enjoy putting myself in situations where I don't know anything and I have to figure it out. So at that time in my life, of being single, not having kids, I was able to go to these cities and really explore, meet new people, figure out what's the good what are the good hangout spots, what are the good food spots, and just immersing myself in something new. And then at the same time, I was in a position where I could choose where I wanted to go. And I left, obviously, I left New York because of something that was out of my control. But when I left Houston, somebody put a dollar amount in front of me, and I was like, oh, yeah, we out.
Okay. So it wasn't like the project ended and you had to go to the next
Uh,
thing. You got a better opportunity.
you got a better opportunity. And the same thing happened when I left Philly and went to Chicago. Just somebody called me. We like your resume. What would it take to get you out here?
So hold up, let's break this down. So when you go from, what year do you go to Elmira, New York?
I was 2012.
And then you go from Elmira, New York in 2012 to Houston in what year?
2012 and 2013. So I got
2013. And then
yeah,
after Houston, you go to Philly.
Philadelphia. Yep.
And what year you go to Philly?
13 through 16.
So you stayed in Philly for 3 years
Yep.
and then went to Chicago.
Chicago 16 to 18.
We crossed paths when I was in DC for like a stint. Do you remember?
I do. We met at a bar. I won't name names, but yeah, we met.
Yes, we did. Yeah, I ain't
Yeah.
gonna lie. That whole moment in DC is a blur for a nigga.
Yeah.
Like,
Yeah.
I cannot lie to you. I was there for like maybe 8 months, from like January to August. A lot of that culture has a lot of happy hours and just a lot
Oh,
of like just drinking, brunches. Like, oh, it's a
love
big
DC.
blur. For some reason, I thought you was living in DC for once at one point. I was like, but
I was in Philly, and I was
Philly,
yeah, I was in Philly at that time, and I would shoot down to DC and go to New York every now and then too. Philly is in a great location
it
to where
is.
you can just move around.
So, of the places that you've lived outside of Durham, and I'm sure there's even more from Chicago to where
Yeah,
you are now.
yep.
But just in short, like, what are the best 1 and 2 places that you've lived not in Durham?
All right, so my favorite city in the world, I live here now, which is in New Orleans.
Okay,
Outside of New Orleans, my favorite city in the summer is cliche, Chicago.
Chicago.
Chicago. I had a great time in Philly because I had a lot of family in Philly at the time, and still do. In Houston, had a great time. That was like my first time living in a major city, but it was too much. It was too much. I got involved in too much. Put too much on my plate. Too much, did all much shit.
Oh boy.
And then Houston was very spread out too, which I did not like that. I did not like how spread out Houston was. But
Mhm.
yeah, New Orleans and Chicago probably my top two. But outside of the summer in Chicago, I can't go for that for those winters. It's too much.
Yeah, yeah. No, my wife's family is in Chicago. I've only been once, but it was like in the springish, and it was just now. It was like just tolerable to be warm enough to like go walking around the lake and
Yeah,
whatnot. And it was like, yeah, this is dope right around here. And listening to Kanye, he's like, "Oh, I'm on Lakeshore Drive." Like, you know what I'm saying? You go there for the first time, you start putting the raps together with the streets.
yeah.
Like, I do remember that. Somebody did ask a question to speak about possibilities without a college degree when it comes to engineering. Like, is that something that you can speak to in terms of opportunities in what you do if you say you go a different route that isn't, say, the 4-year route or the university route?
That's kind of tough for me to answer just because I don't have any experience with that.
Hmm.
I would, if this is just off the top of my head, but I would say just start by doing something. Whatever it is that you're interested in, whether it be, people use the buzzword tech now.
Right.
But that's really like computer engineering, building different platforms or learning how to code. That's a form of computer engineering. So you don't have to have a degree to do that if you know how to code. But when it comes to some of the other disciplines like civil, chemical, electrical, aerospace, I don't know any major companies that are taking people that don't have that degree. That's not to mean that they don't, but I haven't seen it. But I'm sure with smaller companies, if you have some sort of proven track record doing something, maybe even it just be trying to find an internship somewhere. You don't have the degree. Maybe you take an internship and they might help pay for the degree if they see that you have the work ethic and right attitude. But as far as just not having a degree and no experience, I haven't seen it.
No, I would imagine that, like you said, it's not something that you just necessarily fall into. You don't just say like similar like engineers. It's similar to lawyers and just you don't just fall into being a doctor or a lawyer. Typically, there's like a goal to become that at some point. So then you figure out like the necessary steps. Like I feel where you're coming from when you're going from these different cities. Are you still within the same type of engineering? Are you still doing this electrical engineering from
Yeah,
Philly to
yeah.
Chicago?
all of all of the companies that I've worked for and the projects that I've worked on all have to do with some sort of either system modification on an aircraft or spacecraft or whatever, and really doing some type of wiring diagrams to show how different electronic equipment or boxes, what we call them, communicate with each other. And that's just laying things out for a technician to install. It's not like I'm physically on an aircraft. Sometimes I would have to go when I was in Philly because I worked on private jets. I would go out to whatever jet I was working on, do some survey work. Even at GoGo, when we were putting internet on airplanes, we would go out and survey an aircraft, see if we could put things in certain locations, see what was available, and then do our engineering work from there. But it was all kind of related. The only time that it really changed is when I got to Delta in Atlanta, and I was able to get into testing and hardware testing. We were working on upgrading all of Delta's aircraft, their older aircrafts, while putting in new in-flight entertainment equipment. I was in a lab for a large portion that I was there, so making sure that the monitors that we were putting in and the headphones that we were going to install met all of the requirements of the FAA. So that was kind of a pivot there. But outside of that, everything else has been pretty similar.
Okay, word. I'm following the path, and you mentioned Atlanta, right? Now, I'm curious because at some point you meet someone who becomes your wife.
Absolutely.
How do you cross paths with this person ultimately for the first time?
We met on a dating app, man. We met on a dating app. We talked I ended up getting her number, and we talked for maybe like 3 or 4 weeks before we actually went out. So at that point, I was kind of intentional about what I wanted to do. Like I was single between my last relationship, which was a college relationship, until meeting my wife. It was a span of 10 years. I kind of lived my life, if you will. And and I wanted something stable. I moved around. I was just I got to a point in my life where it's like, okay, let's see if I can build. Let's see if some grass can grow under my feet. We talked, and it felt like I knew her. I felt like we had known each other for way longer than we had. While there was effort, it felt effortless, if you know what I mean.
Where were you staying at the time?
I was in Atlanta. I was on the south side of Atlanta. If you're familiar, Sylvan Road, Cleveland Avenue. I'm sure people know Cleveland Avenue from Young Thug, but around that area.
And was she in Atlanta at the same time?
She was in Atlanta. She was on the north side. And we dated for a few months, made it official. And we were together for about a year, and then COVID happened. And that sped things up because we're together all the time. I'm like, yeah, man, if we gonna move in, we need to go ahead and make this for real. My mom wasn't having no shacking up.
So how long were y'all dating before COVID hit?
About a year.
Okay.
About a year.
And like so I hear you say like you had got to a point in your own life where you felt like you were ready for, say, the next thing or something more serious or stable? Like, what was it, do you personally feel that made, say, that light bulb go off for you? Like, what was it where it was like, you know what, I'm gonna like make this more of an intentional effort moving forward?
All right, and this can, I don't want to go too far off on a tangent, but you ever realize sometimes when you're doing whatever, it could be whatever, but you run into the same obstacle all the time, and you realize like if you don't change something that you'll never get past that. For me, it was that in my relationship or in my dating life, where and probably by my own doing, if I'm being honest. So I found myself having a lot of the same issues with the women that I would talk to. There was a lot that I knew that I needed to change about myself, and in dating who became my wife, she helped me do that. So it was one, having the intention of saying, okay, I don't want to just see where it goes, because at the time before that, it was that's what it was. All right, we'll see where it goes. I'm not putting no labels on anything, but I think when you date intentionally and you make your intentions known, and the other person does as well, and you're in alignment, there's something to saying, okay, we're gonna have a commitment to see if this thing is gonna really work.
I agree.
So I was tired of running into the same things, and I found somebody that I thought I could do life with, and so far it's working out well.
Word up. Nah, man,
Yeah.
that's what's up, man. Hey, look, man, I always shout out brothers who made that decision, man, because
Yeah.
it's I like the way you framed it, in that not just in relationships, man, but in many facets do we
Yeah.
find ourselves with like in these cycles with the
Yeah.
same outcome over and over and over and over. And
Yeah.
then way too often do we have a tendency to look outward versus inward to get a different result, man. I'm with you 1,000%. And the thing about the intent piece too is like you get what you seek
Absolutely.
in this world, right? So if you don't like, that's one of the things. If vice versa, I'm always, so the way that like I was never really career oriented, I was like partner oriented. I always like looked at my relationships as like, is this setting up the thing I want the partnership to be long term? And I don't know why I've always been like that, but like, you know how Outkast, each album sold more and more and more? Like, they're the only group to go more and more and more and more. All my relationships from like, I'm talking middle school to high school to college and beyond, each one was a longer and longer and longer until I got married. And I don't know, I always looked at that as like I don't know why I prioritized that over other things, but it was a priority for me. But I say that to say, I met my wife at a bar, didn't know her from a can of paint, right? When you know you're just looking for something specific, you just never like know like what that specific thing looks like. But then it all of a sudden the universe puts it right in front of you, right? It's like you get what you're looking for. You didn't see any black Hondas, then you go buy a black Honda, and then all you see is black Hondas on the road. That's how the world works. And I think relationships are definitely the same in that regard.
Well, let me ask you this. I think it was Nipsey Hussle who said, "When preparation meets opportunity," I forget the rest of it, but it's a formula for success, basically. When you met your wife? That obviously that was an opportunity. Were you prepared for that at that time?
In retrospect, no. But
Yeah.
this is what I have always had. And I relate this to like professional athletes,
Mhm.
and that I have an irrational confidence in myself.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome.
I really do think I'm that,
That's
bro. I
awesome.
really do. Like,
That's awesome, man.
I be thinking to myself, like, if she don't like me, she must just not like the cup of tea. Like, so and
Right,
that's okay. But if you like green tea, you gonna with G. Like,
right, right.
and if I'm not suitable for you, then you're tripping. Like, that's how I operate. Like, that's how
Yeah,
I operate. And
yeah.
I do have this irrational confidence in that I think I'm a really good, suitable partner, and I'll figure it out. When I met my wife, for example, she was in the forest. I didn't know where I was going to live, what I was going to do professionally.
Mhm.
I didn't have any like plan to do that other than like I found someone who I thought was the one, and then I'll
Right.
figure everything else out. So that was like my say order, but it was an irrational confidence. And if we don't have irrational confidence, then what are we going to have the belief to pursue on
Yeah.
anything that we do, whether it be the romantic relationships, the professional development, the what do we call it, the creative expressions, or it's got to be an irrational confidence to put in that energy to make it worth something, in my opinion.
I feel you. And it really is good to hear that. You sparked something in me because my wife and I talk all the time about just work life or whatever. And a lot of times the people who do know the most or whatever don't have the confidence to really express themselves. And a lot of times it's the people who maybe don't know the most, but they have the confidence and they get things done
Yeah.
regardless. You're a mover and a shaker. You get things done. I think that's important because you learn along the way. Like if you don't start by just saying, "Hey, I got this idea. I'm gonna go do something." If you don't do that one action, you'll be, what is it? Analysis paralysis.
Right. Right. You
You're
be stuck
overthinking.
thinking. Yeah, you just be stuck thinking. Opportunities passing you by while you just thinking about it.
Yeah.
Yeah. Nah, man. And I think it's also important for men to talk about like why they make that decision to make that choice. Because I also will tell people, so I just celebrated 10 years marriage, and
Congratulations, man.
I appreciate it. I appreciate it. And like that's a long time. Like I've seen folks get married and divorced in this time period. I've seen like whole families, like multiple children. I've seen people have multiple wives. I've seen so many different outcomes in a 10-year time span. I would never like just recommend that everybody do this.
Oh, not at all. You gotta want to do it. You have to want to do it, and you have to be willing to work on yourself.
Yeah.
And a lot of people don't want to. They are comfortable with who they are, and that's what it's gonna be. It's not easy, but it's fun. It's fun. You learn something all the time.
I agree. I agree. Like, why do you feel like, just for you personally, that was like something that you felt was important to you to say, have, say, a marriage, like an official marriage?
I knew I wanted kids, and I
Mm,
knew I did not want to bring up kids that weren't going to be in my household. I also wanted my kids to have a great mom. So really, I was at the time, and it's kind of crazy just to even think about this now, but I think at the time I was thinking more so about great mother than I was great wife, and I was fortunate to get both. But now that I can kind of look back, hindsight 2020, I think you need to, if I were giving advice to anybody, you need to look really closely at both. And
hmm
maybe I did, and maybe I'm just not really pulling those memories, but she's great at both. She forces me to look myself in the mirror every day and ask myself, am I getting better or am I getting worse? Because it's one of the two.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. And y'all were together when COVID hit, bro. I had already been, say, married. We lived in Mexico,
Mhm.
DC, Amsterdam, Durham. But when COVID hit, it even changed our dynamic, having been together
Mhm.
that long. Like,
Yeah.
it was the first time my wife had ever seen me in a like at work using my white voice from home. You know what I'm saying? Like
Code switching.
she's like, who is this
Yeah.
nigga on these calls? Like,
Yeah. Yeah.
like, like she's seeing a different version of me having to work from home. I'm seeing a different version of her having to work from home. The amount of time that we're now forced to spend in what at the time was a smaller space that we didn't like have plans to work from home in, but now we're like making makeshift offices and corners here, corner there. We're around each other all the time. Like,
Mhm.
just what was that experience like for you, getting quarantined with someone, being in that relationship? How did it impact the dynamic between you two?
We actually got closer. I realized that I can spend a lot of time around this person and it's cool. But like, I don't feel like I have to be somewhere else. Like, because naturally, I am an extrovert. Like, I can't sit around the house more than 3 days in a row. I got to get outside. Even if it's
Mm,
going to the park and running something, I got to get out
mhm,
the house and see what's going on outside these doors. I was still going to work though for the most part during quarantine. And they Delta devised this plan where you go in shifts. Like some people would go Tuesday, Thursday, some people go Monday, Wednesday, Friday, just to try to keep people separated. So it wasn't like we were around each other 24/7. But in the time that we were around each other, which was more than obviously pre-quarantine, that's when I realized like, okay, I'm gonna marry this person. Like what else could anybody ask for? Somebody who checks boxes or whatever, but you have a feeling about, and they also respect your space and you respect theirs. A big part of marriage is respect.
Oh, dog, like, oh, you talking to the,
Yeah.
you preaching to the choir now, boy. Oh man, don't, hey, respect the nigga. Don't be coming here trying to just make me mad for no reason now. Like, yo, can you chill? Like,
Right.
like, man, I'm telling you that, yo.
So it worked out for us. And I know a lot of people who ended up breaking up during quarantine. It was just like noticing some things that I did not realize before.
You can't hide when you
Yeah.
lock down with somebody 24/7 like that. It's tough to hide, man. Like, cause they're gonna see all sides of you. But like you said too, man, respect is so key. I can't lie to you. Like when I did have, say, my whole phase, if you will, before I met my wife, like
Mhm.
that was like the biggest red flag. Like I wasn't tolerating no disrespect. Like
Yeah.
if I felt like someone was being unreasonably disrespectful
Yeah.
or like rude, that would be the last time we had the conversation. Like I was having like
Absolutely.
zero tolerance for that type of stuff, man. And I think one great trait, just in my opinion, is if you're with somebody and even when she's super pissed off, she doesn't go out of her way to try to make you pissed off.
Right.
That is a
Right.
really awesome trait. And I don't
Yeah.
think it's that common personally,
It's
but I think
grace.
it is a great trait to have.
Yeah,
Yes.
absolutely. Absolutely. And that's really working for the betterment of y'all's relationship. Like she's like, hey, I I know he may be going through something. And depending on how much you talk, you probably let her know. Like, hey man, I got some things I'm trying to work through. I'm cooped up in
Facts.
this house. I'm
Yeah.
trying to work.
I need a moment. Like I'm tight right now. Like I'm super tight. Like let me get this out. I'm tight.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
yo, so okay, so tell me this because also your wife is not a Black American,
Correct.
correct? Is that fair to say like that? I want to
Yep.
make sure I'm doing
Correct.
this the right way.
Yep.
And from what I understand, she is Egyptian.
Yep. She was born in Cairo. She moved to the States when she was 7, I believe.
All right, so I gotta ask here
Hmm.
because I consider you a Black person,
Hmm.
say traditional Black American.
Absolutely.
Most traditional Black American families do
Hmm.
have a bit of a eyebrow raise at minimum, if not
Oh yeah.
side eye, when you
Yeah.
start dating outside of the culture.
Absolutely.
Did you
Which is
have, huh?
go ahead.
I said, no, what'd you say? Who they do the same too?
Yo, yeah, my family definitely.
Did you have any reservations upon like figuring out how to introduce your partner to your family or anything of that sort? Like, because you're bringing someone in who isn't necessarily of the same culture, was there any like hesitation, reservation there in any sort of way?
For me, no. The biggest thing for me was that, or not the biggest thing for me. I'll say this: my wife is a Christian. I grew up in a Christian household, and to me, I think that's more important than whatever you call yourself, black, white, red, brown, whatever. I didn't have any hesitation because I'm secure in what I'm doing. No, nobody. If somebody else doesn't like it, that's all. That ain't got nothing to do with me. That's your business.
Yeah.
It ain't got nothing to do with me. My mom calls her African American, which she is. She is an African
Technically, yeah,
American.
she more African American than you. She actually got she
Right,
got ties, yeah.
but for Egyptians, this may be specific to Egypt in itself, but
Mm,
you ask Egyptians what they are. I'm Egyptian.
right.
Like, don't call me Arab, don't call me North African, don't call me whatever. I am Egyptian. Any other label that you have, it doesn't apply to me. I'm Egyptian, and that's in the North and the South. So for me, to me, it's yes, I do resonate with. It's a lot of Black folks who intentionally date outside of their race for whatever reason. Again, that don't have anything to do with me. That's you look at my sheet, it ain't that, you know. It's not that. So obviously, I wasn't looking for something outside of my race. It just I found a dope person, and we share the same values. You can choose to date for whatever reason you want, or look for whatever quality is you think, or physical quality, whatever. But your values don't align, it's gonna be a short relationship anyway. So
Mm-hmm.
more than anything, I look for somebody I know that share the same values as I have.
No, that's a sound approach. You sound like an engineer, I have to say. That sounds like a logical approach to the whole thing, I have to say.
Yeah.
No, for real. So did your family have any sort of like jokes, pushbacks, like anything that you had to deal with from a standpoint like, Mike, come on, man, what you doing? Or was there any kind of family pushback at all?
No, I had some cousins ask, well, does she consider herself Black or white? I was like, she don't consider herself either. That's just not something that is common. But for her in Cairo, and she'll tell you this, the question isn't what shade you are you Muslim or are you Christian? For her, that's more important. And I would imagine that goes along with values or whatever, because your belief system matters a little bit more in that part of the world. But I did have some cousins who asked that. I've had a cousin who just intentionally will not talk to me anymore. Didn't give a reason why, but I assume it's that. But
That's crazy. Oh my goodness. Oh
but
boy. Negroes, boy.
yeah,
Hey. They be hung up.
yeah,
That boy losing too much weight. And it'd be
right,
any little thing to interrupt their whole day.
right. But at the end of the day, when somebody has a problem with something, usually they're the only person sitting around thinking about it. That it don't cross my mind.
Yeah, that's wild. Wow.
Yeah,
It's
yeah,
unfortunate. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate. But no, I mean, it's like, it's a reality. That's why I had asked the question, man, because
yeah.
I do know for a fact, man, when you bring someone home outside of culture, it is not necessarily assumed to just go over smoothly per se, that everybody's just going to be all in. But I'm glad to hear that for the most part, largely, that hasn't been your experience.
Yeah. But
And
what's go
go
ahead.
ahead. No, go
No,
ahead.
what's crazy to me though is that we had Black Americans have a fascination with Africa in general, whether it be West African history or Egyptian history or whatever. So for that to even be an issue,
Right.
like for anybody, it's just kind of like, what are we? All right, so are we claiming this history or are we not claiming the history?
That's a whole other conversation of how people will want to claim Egypt. They'll claim everything from Egypt all the way over to everything. It's like all the way over to West. Okay, now which one you want to claim, right? And I feel what you're saying. I feel what you're
Right.
saying.
Yeah.
And you actually went over there to.
We went in May. I was fortunate to be able to take my mom and my daughter.
Oh, that's dope.
Her sister came, and one of my good friends came. We had a great time. We went to Cairo, Luxor, and Sharm el Sheikh, which is like a resort town. Luxor to me was the best experience because you actually go into those tombs of where
What?
all the kings and the queens were buried, and you look on those walls, it's Black folks.
Hold up, you inside the tomb? Like you talking about these like the Great Pyramids, like that sort of
No,
vibe, or
so
somewhere
no,
different?
nobody is buried in the Great Pyramids. All the kings and queens are buried in the Valley of the Kings and Valley of the Queens. And then I also went to like the tombs of the nobles and a lot of different temples, which are in Luxor, which is South or Upper Egypt
Oh,
or Lower Egypt, Upper Egypt. I'm sorry, but they have you can go in these tombs and like they're all decked out. like with paintings all over them, ceilings, walls, everything. And it just shows like the king and queen or some of their servants or whatever, but it's all black. So it's undeniable. So it was great for me to just see that, have my family with me, for them to see it, and then have my daughter with me too. Now, obviously, she's not going to remember it, but we're going to make an effort to go back out there every 3-4 years, something like that, just so they have that relationship with her family and
Of course.
that history as well.
Of course, of course, of course. Like I think that's a dope. I think that's a dope thing that to be able to share with somebody is like there. Don't get me wrong.
Mhm.
I am pro say Black American families. I am pro Black American families. But
Absolutely.
with that said, Black Americans, once you get over here and then you have a kid, that kid is the first generation of like your Black American background, right? So you might be Jamaican and you come over here and you end up in Jamaica, Queens, and then all of a sudden you got a kid named Biggie. And now
Right.
he's like the first like Black American in the family, right? And he grows up American and he inherits like what to be Black, because you don't really know what that's like till you get over here. I think it is like you said, like if we're gonna embrace all this quote unquote history and diaspora talk, etc., like we should be more open to these sort of unions, in my opinion. And not even just unions, but relationships in general that connect us back so that we can go back and forth easily, transfer knowledge and
Right.
resources back and forth easily. And if you got
Absolutely.
family on the ground, that's even better, because then when you touch down, you can get that local treatment, make sure
Yeah.
you seeing things for what it really is when you touch down versus just having a tourist view.
And maybe even at some point in my daughter and future daughter's life, they'll be able to conduct business back and forth.
Exactly.
So I don't know, man. The easiest thing in the world is to criticize something. Everybody can look at something and tell you what's wrong with it. It's hard, and it takes a lot of character out of somebody to look at something and tell you what's good about it.
Yeah.
Initially, a gut reaction tell you, "Oh, what do you think about that?" So
Right.
if you listen to the negatives, you have to listen to the positives. So I just try to stay. Hey, what's my business?
Mhm.
Does this is this supposed to affect me or not? And I know what my relationship is, but more than anything, I think people should just be more open to the idea of letting people live their life.
Yeah.
you
Facts.
know, but I'm with you, and I share the same sentiment of being pro. And I know that sounds hard, being that I am married to somebody who's not from this country, but pro Black households. My daughter, she looks like a young Black woman. She is a Black woman. It is what it is, man.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
And like, so you ended up getting your MBA, which is not an engineering degree.
Right.
So what were the circumstances that made you go that pathway to say, "You know what, I need to go get an MBA here to do the next thing"?
It was really when COVID hit, because I was working on upgrading cabin systems. When COVID hit, people stopped flying, obviously, and Delta made a decision to put a hold on all new upgrade projects, which essentially means my team gets disbanded. I took a severance, but I realized in that time that I need more tools in my tool belt. So I knew with wherever I went from there, I was going to go back to school and get another degree.
What was like maybe an example or an experience that kind of like made you look at that differently, to say like, what, I might be missing something? Like what was there anything specific that took place in the job or something?
Well, it was the opportunities, because they gave us opportunities to apply for different roles.
Mhm.
When they announced that, okay, your team will no longer be a part of this organization. So they gave us a chance to look at whatever roles were out there. And I couldn't align myself with anything that either I had within my background or any type of educational experience. For instance, if there was a project manager position available, I don't have anything to lean on to say, hey, I can be a project or so it was really a mindset of don't let not getting a degree, or don't let that ever be a reason why you can't apply to another a position outside of what you're doing already. So for me, it was just like, let me get something that'll help broaden the opportunities that may be available. So yeah, when I got to Louisiana, it was a no-brainer. I was going to get my MBA.
And were there any other options than LSU, or was that pretty much like the goal once you had the idea?
I thought about Tulane just because that's here in New Orleans, but Tulane is way more expensive, and then UNO as well. But I felt that being in Louisiana, LSU has a huge brand and alumni everywhere. So I just felt like the network more than anything would be fruitful to not only get a degree there, but also meet a lot of my classmates.
Yeah.
Who are all kind of throughout Southeast Louisiana. So I was able to build a network outside of my college friends that I already had here in New Orleans. So, and that's, we talked about that earlier when it comes to career fairs or just putting yourself out there in general. A lot of it is networking. So being able to not only have this tool in my toolbox, but having people who I can reach out and say, hey, y'all got anything over there that, you know what I'm saying?
No question.
For me, it was really about the money, and then network secondary.
So I went to grad school when I went to Amsterdam, and I do think without that, if I would have made a different decision and just worked and didn't go back to school, it wouldn't have put me in position to do what I'm doing now, in my opinion. I am one to advocate that we shouldn't poo-poo higher education. We can acknowledge and criticize its deficiencies when it comes to like selectivity, costs, all types of problems exist because it's privatized, right? Like, can you just speak to like, because you identified, okay, need something extra. This is what I need. What did, say, pursuing the MBA help you do professionally, in your opinion?
It made me realize how much time I have in a day. More than anything, being married, obviously that helped me in a lot of ways in my career because I changed a lot of bad habits, if you will, like maybe drinking during the week, maybe not going overboard, but just still not being my best self at work. And just altering that. And then when you're in school, okay, I have a full schedule today. I still got to work out. I still got to go to work, make sure I'm on top of that, come home, spend time with my daughter, and then focus on my schoolwork. So it really helped me get my priorities together more than they were. And then secondly, it helped me prioritize who I was spending my time with. When you have a limited amount of time due to work and school, you can't hang out with your friends the way you want to. You can't. And if you do, it's like, hey, I got a window here.
Right.
It's not like
right.
not like, oh, we could just kick it until the sun comes up. It's not that anymore. So it's really just, it really forced me to just grow up a little bit more.
And like, one question that I do want to ask as well is, you had a daughter. How did having a daughter, or what were some of the biggest changes or impacts that having a daughter had in between, say, you and your wife's dynamic?
The biggest changes between my wife and I in having a daughter.
Yeah.
Oh man, that's my little twin, man. like if me and my wife hug, she's trying to get in the middle and only hug. She lets it know that this is my daddy. Like,
oh man, that is hilarious.
But it forces us to communicate more and communicate better. Maybe more isn't the right word. Just communicate better and give each other some grace. Those first few months, maybe first year is rough.
Yeah.
So one of the things it did for me, it just made me empathize with women more. Maybe I wasn't
having a daughter specifically, or having a kid. Okay.
Having a daughter and watching my wife go through pregnancy and post-pregnancy. So I think that those experiences just made me a little softer, man, as far as just coming from an understanding place and empathetic place and wanting to do more. And my mom used to call me chauvinistic, and I probably still have some of those ways. I mean, honestly, chauvinistic ain't bad.
Oh my God, Joe, that is not a compliment. Yo, you can.
I mean, you can't get opening doors and doing certain things that are
You can't
considered
be
traditional.
chivalrous without being chauvinistic, is what you're saying?
It's a fine line. It's a fine line.
Oh man.
Because some women now don't even want you to do that because everything is equal, and it's just like,
They lying. They lying, man. They
yeah.
lying. They are lying. I want to hold the door for me. Like, what you doing? Like, you see me right here behind you, hold the door. Like, that's just
Right.
human courtesy. That's not even like chivalry. That's just like, yo, hold the door. I'm right here. Like,
Very true.
but
But I
that's
think that
funny.
may also be a cultural thing for Black Americans too, to whereas Black women, they may expect that, whereas other races may not be as thoughtful in that about what that really is.
Mm-hmm.
Because I have dealt with that. A girl wanting to hold the door for me, it's like, what? No, like
You trying to call me a bitch? What you doing?
right,
Like,
right,
yeah, it's like, what's going on here?
But it's different in the South. I will say that too. It's different in the South. I just became more empathetic and really and more thoughtful. I've become more thoughtful.
More thoughtful. Like, meaning what though? Like,
Meaning, if somebody complains, my natural instinct sometimes is to be like, "You're a complainer." Not that you might actually be going through something. So now it's more like, well, let me take a step back and not be judgmental, and really try to understand and help in any way that I can, as opposed to thinking somebody's just complaining. I would say in that way.
okay, word. Now, yo, I think this is important, man, because a lot of us get in our own way when it comes to
Yeah,
these dynamics,
yeah,
and a lot of times I often find that people don't realize how much they tripping sometimes. Dog, it's not them, it's you. You know what I'm
yeah,
saying? Like
yeah.
sometimes like you gotta like, dog, it's not them, it's you. And we don't even realize sometimes like even the little small thing you just mentioned, like, dang, I typically kind of just rub people off when they complaining, but
Yeah,
you know what? Let me take a step back and try that a little bit different. It sounds like like subtle, but like just having been married 10 years, like I still have these realizations of where, okay, hold on, step back,
yeah. Maybe I'm tripping.
kind of tripping a little bit.
Yeah,
I was a little
yeah.
tight. Like you need to relax. Maybe go apologize first this time. Like
Right.
like little
Right.
things like that. Just to if we don't talk about this stuff more often, I think for whatever reason, I don't like the way they try to normalize what like Black men are like in relationships. Like this idea that like everybody's poly, everybody's mixy, everybody's deceptive. Like there's no just like regular quote unquote upstanding gentlemen who trying to do their thing in a marriage, be family men, do those things. That should be more what we talk about on a normal than these
Right.
like conversations of like, but what would you do if it's a threesome? It's like, what are we talking
Right.
about? It's like
Right. What are
it's
we
like,
promoting?
yeah, exactly.
Like, I mean,
OGs
that,
is not really talking like this anymore. Like,
and you don't have to go into too many specifics, but how many, like, if you were to do a percentage of just the people that you know, how many are married, and Black people are married versus not married? Would you say a majority of the people that are married?
a lot of them are like I'm going through the list. I'm going through the list. A
Yeah.
lot of them are. A lot of them are. It probably 60-40.
I would say same, and I think as married couples, we tend to gravitate towards married couples just because it alleviates a lot of questions, and also you can relate more.
Yeah.
You have some similar things to talk about and bounce things off of. But I will say there are a lot of unmarried, especially when people don't have the same upbringing as we might have. A lot of us are not married. And I think when we think about these podcasts or debates that people have where they talk about all this nonsense, it's the non-married folks.
Yeah, it'd be the non-married folks. Yeah, you are 100% right.
It's the non-married folks.
Non-married folks talking about relationships and marriage.
Yeah.
Yeah, no, this is a fact, man. This is a fact. And that's why I appreciate you being so open and sharing your story, not just professionally, but also some personally, man, because one thing about you, Mike, man, you always been a real dude, man. I gotta shout you out for that, man. You always been a real dude, man.
Thank
from the church league days to the high school days to just seeing you randomly here or there. Every time if I see you, boom, we always gonna lock in, say what's up. It's always been love and respect. And I gotta say, like, in Durham, how can I say this so that it's spot on accurate? Durham has a way of just being very tribal and cliquey by nature. And literally, when you grow up here, you'll see people just stop talking to other people because they're in quote unquote separate tribes. Like you'll just see like people grow apart and like just go separate ways, not even talk no more because they end up in different circles and things of that nature. I gotta say, like with you, man, you've been one of the dudes who, even though like pretty well known, you be out like extroverted, you pretty grounded, like one of the more grounded dudes that I ever come across. And then hearing your story here in terms of the engineering background, ended up finding your now wife. Like, I'm just happy to see like what you've gone on to do since you left the city, man, because you, like I said, from day one, always been a stand-up dude.
Thank you.
And hopefully people from the city hear more about what you're doing, and it might even inspire them to pursue like one of these types of passions, maybe even think about going to Tuskegee. I gotta admit, if I had a kid, I think I would be pushing them to go to Tuskegee if I had the resources. Obviously, the money is one thing. In the world of HBCUs, obviously, Winston-Salem State, I'm always going to rep for. But I think Tuskegee is something special, given the history, what they specialize in. And in this world of where we're moving to, we need more Black engineers. We need more Black people in tech, in STEM, in this world of STEM. I'm doing things, and Tuskegee is a great institution producing that, man. So I just appreciate you joining the pod, sharing your story, and being so open.
Thank you. And I appreciate you for having me, G, man. One thing, and I told you this off air a few weeks ago, but I appreciate how I want to use the words you use. You have this, what was the confidence? What is
it? Irrational confidence.
Irrational confidence. And I love it, man. I really do, because you are a doer. You don't
appreciate that.
You don't just let things go by. You put things in motion and you create. And I'm a fan of that. I am a fan of that, man. So thank you for having this. I will continue to watch your podcast. I think you're doing something really special, man. I appreciate you.
Always, man. I greatly appreciate it. Is there anything that you want to leave with the listeners, those watching, any like last words or takeaways that you hope that listeners or people watching will be able to leave with?
I will just echo what I just said, man. Just whatever it is that you have in your mind that you want to do or you want to become, just start. Lay a brick a day. You'll look up one day and you'll realize that you started somewhere with basically nothing, and you've built something in just a matter of a time. What a difference a day makes. So I would say whatever it is that you have a passion for, or inkling of, just to start. And I know we're ending, but I just want to say this too. Like, that's something that I've always done. When I was in Philly, I started DJing. And I just got the idea that, hey, I think I want to DJ. I want people to come over to this nice apartment I have, and I want to play some dope music. So I bought some turntables, and I started mixing and practicing myself until I had the confidence for people to come over. But that led to so many other opportunities and so many different ways for me to actually make some side money. So in that, I just want to say, hey, man.
He was taking them DJ drama slots. He was.
If I put the hat on,
yeah, I know.
Let my
You're taking them DJ drama slots, like.
Yeah. But I would just say, yeah, man, just do something. Don't just sit around. Dang, you about to make me go listen to that Outkast, Get Up, Get Out, and do something.
Hey, it's a classic. It's a classic.
Yeah.
It's a classic. Well, man, I appreciate you joining. We definitely appreciate y'all listening, especially if you made it to this point. Go ahead and hit that subscribe button. You can listen to the G podcast on all platforms. It's out everywhere. Make sure you subscribe anywhere you listen to your favorite podcast. This is the G podcast, where we focus on family, friends, finances, freedom, and our future, and everything else. This is the G podcast. Greatly appreciate y'all listening.
It doesn't matter how you feel.
Make sure y'all subscribe. And we are out of here. Ha.
That was